The ultimatum. In the dimly lit Situation Room beneath New Geneva, Earth's unified capital, Admiral Helena Chen watched the holographic display with narrowed eyes. The massive alien vessel hanging in orbit looked like a cathedral built for space, all gleaming spires and ornate protrusions that served no apparent functional purpose. It had appeared without warning 3 days ago, ignoring all hails until it was surrounded by Earth's defense fleet. "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer. The hologram shifted, revealing a tall, slender being with iridescent scales covering its body. 4 pupilless eyes arranged in a diamond pattern regarded them with what Helena interpreted as contempt. "I am High Emissary Zex Calter of the Galactic Council," the being spoke in flawless English. "Your species has been monitored since your first radio transmissions. Your recent achievements in faster-than-light travel have brought you to our attention formally. The Council has decreed that Earth shall be granted Category 3 Protectorate status." President Santiago stepped forward. "And what exactly does that entail, Emissary?" "The Council will provide protection from hostile species and prevent technological catastrophes that primitive races often inflict upon themselves." The alien's mouth barely moved as it spoke. "In exchange, Earth will provide an annual tribute of 20% of its global resources and place limitations on further technological development as prescribed by Council regulation." The room fell silent. 20% of Earth's resources would cripple the global economy. The technological restrictions would end humanity's golden age of innovation. "That's not protection," Admiral Chen said before she could stop herself. "That's subjugation." The alien tilted its head slightly. "The semantics are irrelevant. You have 7 solar rotations to prepare your initial tribute. The Council is generous in its patience." The transmission ended abruptly. President Santiago turned to her advisors. "Options." Dr. Marcus Way, head of the United Earth Science Directorate, cleared his throat. "Their technology appears advanced, but not incomprehensibly so. From our scans, their ship's architecture suggests a species more concerned with appearance than efficiency." "You're saying they're all show?" asked Defense Secretary Okafor. "I'm saying they might be the equivalent of Victorian-era colonizers who relied on barely superior technology and a lot of bluffing to dominate others," Wei replied. Admiral Chen studied the data scrolling across her tablet. "We've been keeping our true capabilities classified for precisely this scenario. Project Thunderbolt could be operational within 3 days. That's a major escalation," Santiago cautioned. "With respect, Madam President, I believe that's exactly what we need. The emissary expects us to beg, comply, or make a token resistance they can crush as an example. They don't expect us to actually pose a threat." Santiago considered this. "Begin preparations, but continue diplomatic efforts." Over the next 4 days, Earth's diplomats attempted to negotiate with the Galactic Council representatives. Each meeting ended the same way, with dismissive reminders of Earth's primitive status and thinly veiled threats. On the 5th day, the Council demonstrated its power. A small research outpost on the far side of the Moon, housing 37 scientists, vanished in a flash of energy that the aliens described as regrettable but necessary instruction. The message was clear: comply or face destruction. What the Council didn't know was that Earth had been preparing for first contact scenarios for decades. The public-facing Earth defense fleet consisted of relatively simple ships, functional but unimpressive by galactic standards. The real deterrent remained hidden in the asteroid belt. In a classified facility carved into a nameless asteroid, Admiral Chen addressed the commanders of humanity's true fleet. 8 experimental vessels incorporating humanity's most advanced technologies, quantum shielding, gravitational weapons, and AI tactical systems that could process combat scenarios 1,000 times faster than organic brains. The Thunderbolt fleet was built for exploration, Chen told the assembled officers. But its defensive capabilities exceed anything the public knows exists. According to our intelligence, the Council's ship is impressive, but not invincible. More importantly, They don't expect resistance. Captain Aisha Kazumi, commander of the flagship Prometheus, raised her hand. What about the Council's full military? This can't be all they have. It isn't, Chen acknowledged. But Dr. Wei's analysis suggests they rely more on intimidation than actual force. Most species apparently surrender after demonstrations like what happened on the Moon. The Council maintains control through fear and the appearance of overwhelming superiority. So we call their bluff, said Captain Nikolai Volkov of the Hyperion. Precisely, Chen nodded. We've analyzed their communication patterns. This ship is acting independently, expecting an easy submission. By the time they call for reinforcements, we'll have changed the dynamics of this interaction. On the 7th day, as the deadline approached, President Santiago addressed the United Earth Congress, while the alien ship loomed in the sky above every major city's public view screens. We have carefully considered the Galactic Council's offer, she stated formally, and humanity has prepared its response. In orbit, the alien emissary watched with four-eyed satisfaction as a fleet of Earth vessels approached. Exactly as expected, the primitives were bringing their tribute, escorted by their pitiful excuse for warships. The compliance would set a precedent for the next century of resource extraction. What the emissary didn't realize was that these ships were decoys, their holds empty of tribute, but filled with sophisticated electronic warfare systems. And behind Earth's moon, hidden from the Council's sensors, the Thunderbolt fleet prepared to make humanity's actual intentions perfectly clear. Humanity's answer. High Emissary Zex Kaltar's satisfaction turned to confusion as Earth's approaching vessels suddenly dispersed, their formation breaking apart in what appeared to be chaotic disarray. Before he could contact his tactical officer, the emissary's ship was hit by a barrage of electromagnetic pulses that temporarily disabled their primary sensor array. Primitive interference, he hissed. Burn one of their cities as a lesson. But when the sensors came back online, the tactical situation had dramatically changed. 8 vessels of unknown configuration had appeared from behind Earth's moon. Sleek, angular ships that bore little resemblance to the utilitarian craft they had observed before. Unknown vessels approaching, reported the tactical officer, mandibles clicking with uncertainty. Their energy signatures do not match previously observed human technology. Impossible, the emissary snapped. They are a Category 3 civilization. They couldn't possibly. His words died as the lead human vessel fired what appeared to be a conventional missile. The Council gunners easily intercepted it with point defense lasers, but instead of exploding, the missile shattered into thousands of tiny drones that swarmed around the Council ship like angry insects, each one emitting targeted electromagnetic pulses that confused the alien targeting systems. Aboard the Prometheus, Captain Kazemi watched the tactical display with intense focus as her ship led humanity's response. Quantum shields at full capacity, reported her first officer, Commander Takashi. The swarm drones are successfully jamming their targeting. They can't get a weapons lock. Deploy Mark II gravitational lances, Kazemi ordered. Target their propulsion systems only. The Prometheus and its sister ships each fired concentrated beams of distorted spacitime, a weapon that created localized gravity, wells thousands of times stronger than Earth's pull. The Council ship's shields, designed to deflect energy and matter, prove useless against warped gravity itself. On the Council vessel, alarms blared as structural integrity failed along multiple sections. The ship's elegant spires began to buckle under forces they were never designed to withstand. Impossible, the emissary shrieked. Request immediate reinforcements. These primitives have weapons that violate Council technological classifications. But the electromagnetic interference from the drone swarm was blocking all outgoing transmissions to the nearest Council relay station. For the first time in his long career subjugating lesser species, Zex Kaltar felt fear crawling up his spine. The human vessels moved with precision that suggested advanced AI coordination, each taking position around the Council ship to create a perfect containment formation. When the alien vessel attempted to fire its main weapons array, The human ships simply shifted position faster than the targeting computers could adjust, making each shot miss by mere meters. Inside the Council ship, chaos reigned as systems failed in cascading sequence. The emissary's four eyes widened in shock as the main view screen showed the human flagship approaching, its forward section opening like the petals of a deadly flower to reveal what appeared to be a singularity containment chamber. "What is this technology?" he whispered. On the Prometheus, Captain Kazemi stood before giving her final order. "Deploy the quantum negator." The weapon fired, not a destructive beam, but a wave of quantum disruption that washed over the Council ship, temporarily neutralizing the bonds between atoms without breaking them. For 30 terrifying seconds, the alien vessel became essentially intangible, its crew experiencing the sensation of dissolution without actual harm. When the effect ended, every system on the Council ship had reset to its base state, completely defenseless. President Santiago's voice echoed through the communication systems of both fleets. "High Emissary, I believe it's time to renegotiate the terms of our relationship with the Galactic Council." Hours later, in the same situation room where the crisis began, a significantly humbled Zex Calter sat across from Earth's leaders. The emissary's previously imperious posture was gone, replaced by a caution that bordered on fear. The Council was misinformed about Earth's technological advancement, he admitted. "It appears our classification system requires updating." "It requires more than updating," Admiral Chen replied coolly. "It requires abandoning entirely. We will not be classified, categorized, or subjugated." President Santiago leaned forward. "Here are our terms. Earth will join your Galactic Council, but as a full and equal member. No tribute, no restrictions on our development. Instead, we offer fair trade and cultural exchange." "Impossible," the emissary started, then glanced at the holographic display showing the disabled Council ship surrounded by Earth's Thunderbolt fleet. "However, I am authorized to negotiate provisional terms pending full Council review." "The Council will review our terms, not the other way around," Santiago stated firmly. "And to ensure good faith negotiations, your vessel will remain in Earth custody, while you return with our representatives aboard one of our ships." The emissary's scales rippled with what might have been indignation, but he nodded slowly. 3 months later, Earth's delegation returned with a ratified treaty. Humanity had secured its place among the stars not through submission, but through strength that commanded respect. More surprisingly, their stand had inspired a dozen other Category 3 civilizations to demand reclassification and equal treatment. The Galactic Council, faced with potential uprisings across multiple sectors, had little choice but to adapt. On the observation deck of the newly commissioned diplomatic vessel Unity, Admiral Chen stood beside President Santiago, watching as representatives from former subjugated worlds arrived for the first summit of independent worlds. "They're calling it the Earth Doctrine," Santiago said quietly. "The principle that technological classification cannot determine a species' rights." Chen nodded, watching the diverse collection of beings entering the Grand Hall. "And to think, the Council believed we'd simply hand over our resources and freedoms because they had impressive ships." "A lesson for the ages," Santiago replied with a small smile. "Never demand tribute from a species that would rather build battleships." In the years that followed, the galaxy underwent a transformation. The Council reformed into a true cooperative of worlds rather than a hierarchical empire. Earth's willingness to share certain technologies with former subjugated worlds created new alliances and trade networks. And somewhere in a distant corner of the Council's former archives, the classification for humanity was updated from Category 3, primitive/exploitable, to a newly created designation, Category Omega, approach with extreme caution.